friend. Welcome to Wild and Waking, a sacred space for the woman unraveling what no longer fits, remembering the truth that's always lived inside her, reclaiming her joy, her voice, her power, and rising fully, fiercely, and without apology. I'm your host, Emily Rushell, and together we'll explore what it means to live in alignment, lead with soul, and awaken a life of abundance, authenticity, and purpose. Let's begin. Hi, friends. Welcome back to Wild and Waking. Today, I'm joined by my friend Nadine. She just re-released her book into the world. It's called Your Journey to Consent, a Practical Guide to Understand, Prevent, and Heal from Sexual Violence. She has a background in human rights work and politics. She is a Reiki practitioner and teacher. I had the joy of having a session with her the other day, and it was wonderful, obviously virtual, because she is tuning in from the other side of the world, which is just such a delight to find a time between our time zones where we have been able to connect a few times over the last week. So I'm really excited to see where this conversation leads. Nadine, welcome to Wild and Waking.
Thank you. And I'm so excited to be here. It's been actually wonderful to connect with you over the last days, and it was such a pleasure to do Reiki for you as well. Indeed, I republished last weekend, which I have celebrated. And it is such a topic that is very alive for me for quite a long time, as someone who has experienced sexual violence in a young age, and that kind of tumbled into me starting my whole healing and not only discovering sexual violence, of course, but also discovering womb work, energy healing, yoga, meditation, and all forms to kind of feel better in myself and better about myself. And at the same time, I studied law back in the Netherlands. And for my second master degree, wrote a thesis on gender-based violence, which is now 3 years ago. 1 year ago, after 2 years of travels and doing loads of things and becoming a Reiki master, a Kundalini yoga teacher, I was like, I want to do something that kind of ties it all together. And that became this, which kind of feels like a fresh new start right now for my career, but also just in my life. Because I feel like a lot of people, including me, when we experience such a big trauma, it becomes such a big part of our life, whether we're trying to survive it, whether we're trying to heal, trying to move on from it. And there's so much that comes together. And what I really noticed this weekend was just that feeling of choosing to live and choosing to move forward and just to feel so good in yourself and to kind of reconnect with yourself. And I think that in the end, that is in one sentence what I do is supporting women mostly, but also men, of course, to reconnect with themselves and to discover what is alive and true in them through the book as a practical guide with exercises on the topic of sexual violence, and in my one-on-one work by bringing Reiki and energy healing, but also womb practices into your daily life. And how can you use that not to make yourself better, but to get to know yourself? So you know what you feel, you know what your body feels like, your energy feels like, and how to use that and express that rather than trying to be someone you're not or trying to force yourself, but just following those little sparks of desire and needs. And that's like,
Yeah. One thing that we had touched on before we hit record is how healing can be beautiful. You know, doing the work, personal growth, like however you want to describe it. These are all things that can really enrich our life, that can bring a lot of healing and fulfillment and clarity and bring us home to ourselves in so many ways. But it can also be a slippery slope into, trying to always find the thing that's going to make us feel better, which is kind of like another version of outsourcing, right? And so how has the work that you've done over the past couple of years changed your perspective from this, like I said, slippery slope of healing into more coming into yourself, into your body, and really living for the vibrancy of being alive?
That is absolutely a beautiful question. I think that it has many different components. I think it also comes in phases. We have these phases where we're really invited to come deeper into ourselves and where we do feel a lot of grief or heaviness, and there are things to look at. And I feel like after a phase like that, it's so important. And I notice it in myself that it's so important to also focus on being alive. Because for me, for quite a while, I was just trying to learn more and trying to improve myself. That kind of turned into feeling like that as long as I proved that I was doing better every day, I would feel better. And especially when it comes to trauma, like I did EMDR therapy for hours, and that helped me make sense of everything in my brain. But then when I started doing a lot of womb work and body work, I noticed there's so much still in the body. And like, I really learned over time that not everything is meant to be understood. And sometimes we just have to feel and express. And I think that, especially over the last year, that really came up where I have finished the book and I was like, okay, and now do we move forward? And then I noticed that like I needed to move forward from a place of I really want to live and I want to create all of these beautiful things because I deserve it and not because I have to prove that I'm better. And that is especially with womb practices, but also with Kriya Yoga and Reiki. All of these tools allow you to set a little step deeper into yourself and allow you to kind of uncover all of these little puzzle pieces from yourself. And I think that at some point, we just learned that it is also kind of like this switch from how do I become better to who am I and how do I become more of me instead of oh, this and this and this, because there's so much that we can't really understand with our brain. No matter how hard we try, some things we just feel. And that is something that I knew for a long time, but I really started living over the last year. And it just feels so good.
What does it mean to you when you say like becoming more of me and like really feeling aliveness? Like, what does that look like, not just from a philosophical standpoint, but on a day-to-day basis?
I think on a day-to-day basis, that really starts with being intentional. So taking every morning before I do anything else, like at least 20 minutes to just wake my body up and move and see how do I actually feel in my body? Which thoughts are racing or are there no thoughts racing? And just really checking in with yourself and moving through your day, being mindful of like, oh, what is it that I really want and doing those things, which can be small from, oh, I would really love a piece of chocolate right now, to really big, like, oh, but I feel such a big ambition and fire inside of myself to publish a book on sexual violence that you start doing that. So it's kind of like finding out the things that you really feel alive in your body instead of only like, oh, well, now I'm a grown up, so now I need to go and get this job and I have to have this amount of money on my bank account and no. But really feeling what is alive in you while, of course, also taking up all the other responsibilities.
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind for me, because I have found myself sometimes like recognizing this coming up, right? I'm a mom. I have 4 kids. When we got on our call, I'm like, we just ran a baseball camp and then we have a doctor's appointment and then we have ball games today. You know, there's like so much in my day that is in the season of life that I'm in is for my family. And also beautiful, great, wonderful. I know that these are the days that I'm going to look back on fondly and you know, these are the days kind of mentality. But I think we can fall in the trap of, oh, well, here's all these obligations that I have. So I can't do X, Y, and Z, right? I don't have the freedom to pick up and fly to another country or, you know, do yoga for hours or whatever that looks like. But one thing that I have really been focusing on is like, what does it look like in the practical sense in my home today? Anyone who's been listening for the podcast for a while knows I'm like on this journey of adding more color to my home. And it's like a fundamentally simple thing, but it's like a wall of paint or a walk or just like the way that I decide that I want to feel about myself and my circumstance on a day-to-day basis. And I do feel like things like Reiki, like the different healing practices, the ideas that we're exploring here on Wild and Waking, like that has rebuilt the scaffolding for my inner world and the way that I can connect with myself and belong to myself as opposed to external institutions, external people, external opinions. Like that, I feel like is so important. But I also, for anyone listening, want to bring it down to like the simplicity of just getting to choose to live life for yourself as a sovereign being in tandem with the things that are very real in your life. If you also have 1,000 kids, or maybe you're in a job right now and it does not feel like an option for you to, make a move that feels super aligned. It's like, what can you integrate on a day-to-day basis to feel that aliveness? Because I think sometimes we get caught in the absolutes of like, either I'm stuck in these circumstances and woe is me, this is so hard, I'm so stressed, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm so tired, I don't have any time. And the opposite of that is like flying to Bali and spending like the next 3 months by myself, which is not an option, right? So what is that practical in between? And it's the summary of all of those little things that really reshape your reality, even if some of those bigger external things don't even change.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. And I think that, especially when I teach Reiki, I always tell my students, like, it's not this new mask that you're fitting on to yourself and now you're a Reiki practitioner, or it's not like you're going to go to Bali and all of your life is going to be solved. I've not been to Bali, but to
Me
Thailand, that's
neither.
very similar. I feel like it's so important to realize that a lot of those things come from changing how you are in your day-to-day life. And I also feel like, especially with energy work, all of the magic is in your day-to-day life, because you can do 10 hours of yoga a day, yoga in the sense of asana. But if you're still being a dick to the server who gives you your coffee, what are you doing? If you are not empathetic towards the world around you. And I always, as well, especially with my human rights background, find it important to also point out, like, it is very often such a big privilege to be able to get the choice to be like, I'm only going to take care of myself. And I feel like if we have that privilege, we should also use it for the rest of the world, which means that we should educate ourselves about the situations other people are in. We should look outside of ourselves and not just go, oh, I need to heal and now everything is about me, me, me. No, we're all part of this bigger collective. And in this bigger collective, we have responsibilities for our families, but we also have a responsibility simply to be a good human.
I would love to dig into this further, because I feel like in some online personal development and spiritual spaces, it's very much the focus is on me. And if I am healed, then I am doing the work and I can only control what's in my control. And it's just my responsibility to block out anything that like doesn't help me keep my peace. And like to some extent, like, yes, you have to have some energetic boundaries around like what you're consuming all day, every day, because it can consume you. But also,
It
we
sometimes
exist.
really makes me want to vomit. I'm
It
sorry.
makes me irate. And like, I'll just call it out. I am like a middle class white woman. And yeah, if I just like, oh, I just have to work on my own healing, then I'm not doing anything to, I'm only doing like what is convenient for me to make the world better. Yes, I'm pouring into my kids and they will pour into the world. And yes, I'm leading this community. And yes, like the ripple effect matters. But also, if I'm just dissociating from like the very real things that are happening, not only in my backyard, not only in my country, but on a global scale, then like I'm doing a massive disservice to be able to use what's available to me to like make any kind of systemic change. So I would love, as someone who has a background in law, in human rights, in gender-based violence, and also is like very deeply attuned and spiritual, I would love to hear anything you have to share related at like what's the intersection and overlap between the two, both on like a big scale basis and like on a individual what can we do basis.
I think I would love to start very practical individually, because I feel like that is always the starting point, which comes with, this is actually what I teach in my Reiki, especially Reiki level 2, where I teach facilitators how to facilitate. I always tell them, before you do anything, before you start facilitating, I need you to sit down with yourself and ask yourself, what are my standards? What are your values? not only to protect yourself in what do you want to offer to the world, but also to protect the world. Because good intentions do not always equal good results. So we always have to start by, okay, if I want to do XYZ, how is that going to affect me? How is that going to affect the people close to me? How is that going to affect the rest of the world? Because exploitation and colonialism, especially under white people, is such a big thing. And it is so important to be aware of those things. And especially, like, I am a Kriya Yoga teacher, I am a Reiki teacher. Like, those things come from a lineage. And it is up to me to really, truly respect the lineage I'm from and to honor that, but also to not exploit that. And I think that it's so important to just be aware of those things all the time. But also, this is a bit of a rude example, but I'm going to use it. There are so many people who are just like, oh, we can manifest abundance and we're just going to call in all the abundance and blah, blah, blah. But for me, it's also, okay, but where does it come from? Because if it is blood money, for example, that someone earned by fighting a war and shooting people, I don't really need that money on my bank account. I will politely decline. That is one of my values I have, the same as I find it important to make sure that if I have gotten so much of my practice that if someone comes to me and they don't have the means to pay me, but I can see that they really need the help in that moment, that I will still give them something. I won't just be like, oh no, I'm sorry, if you don't want to pay me this, that, no. Well, at the same time, also valuing yourself, of course, because you can't just go out and giving freely. But I think it always starts and ends by knowing who you are and knowing how you stand on big topics. And that's also part of the reason that I wrote the book on sexual violence, because I feel like oftentimes people do bad things or they don't take others into consideration because of a lack of education, because of not understanding what we're talking about. So I find it always important to really sit with yourself and just be like, who am I? What do I stand for? Why do I stand for this? I can be honest, I'm a very, very left person, so to say, very politically seen left. And I don't expect my students to agree with all of my opinions, but I do expect them to be able to explain to me why they think the way they think, to be able to explain to me what their boundaries are. For example, with facilitating Reiki, I personally find it ethically not okay to, when I went through a breakup, I don't see my clients, because how am I going to work with your energy if my energy is completely off the charge? And those are simple, small things that we can do. But also, if I am traveling to another country, and that is as a traveler, like I've been nomadic for the last 3 years, one big thing for me as well, like there are a lot of Western white people who live in Asia, in countries where they can live cheaply, but then they have the biggest mouth on migration in Europe or migration into America. And the only thing I have to ask to them, which they never really like, is, I'm sorry, but how are you different besides the amount of money on your bank account?
And the color of your
And
skin.
and the color of your skin, indeed. Like, I think those things are really important to just sit with and to educate yourself about. And I'm sorry, I'm going on a rant. Like, it's
No,
like
this is
opening a box and it never stops.
no, I think that this has been like such a big conversation for me. And I think is a huge part of it. And I think there are some people, it's just really, we are in a very interesting time right now, I believe. Like I see some people who are fighting so hard politically, but are so untethered and are so ungrounded. And although conceptually I agree with what they're saying, I can feel just like the hurt and the shame and the anger and the hatred and the frustration. And that's like, ugh. And then I could see like this other side of like, but it's all love and light and everything's fine. And like, that's dissociation. And I think it's real for a lot of women in my community who are doing really deep healing work and are growing the capacity to be able to hold things on a bigger scale and are wanting to make systemic change in their communities and beyond. I think it can be really disorienting and confusing and kind of overwhelming to figure out like what is the intersection of all of this. because we cannot individually take on everything. And also, like, we need women who are willing to take on something. And I think that's why we have been so disconnected from our power and ourselves. So it all goes in tandem. Like, the more we're aware of our energy and like coming into our healing and are more sovereign within ourselves, the more vocal and less shits that we give about like playing by these like rules of niceties that we've been tiptoeing around for so long, that have like in part created these forces that are now doing massive harm. But for a lot of the women who are listening, who are on this path, I think this is a conversation that they are trying to have within themselves. And they're obviously, because there's not one clear answer to anything that matters. So I think everything that you're saying is so resonant for me as well.
I think it's also so important that we always realize that being able to look away from these situations is a privilege in itself. The fact that we can say, oh, well, I'm not going to open the news today is a privilege in itself, because in the end, like, we don't choose where we grow up. We don't choose where we get born. And it's just a matter of luck that we were born in these places. And I think that with that comes the responsibility of indeed asking ourselves the hard questions. But also, one thing that I personally find important is that we learn to amplify the voices of others, so that when we open up those public conversations, for example, about colonialism in spirituality, that we amplify the voices of those who are indigenous, of those who are from India or from lineages, instead of giving our opinion. And also, when we come back to when we speak about sexual violence, that we ask survivors what they need rather than deciding that for them. And I think that that already is a really big thing that we can learn to do, is learning that we don't know what is best for someone else. All we can do is support them until they are in a position where they get to ask for what they need. Because someone who is in really big need, someone who needs safety, physical safety, won't sit down and ask for emotional safety if they still need food, if they still need a house. So we need to support them to get in a position where they can speak for themselves. And we have to follow their lead. And I think that that, especially for us white women, is an important thing to realize.
Yeah, I think at the minimum, it has been so meaningful for me to just start following people from other countries, from different backgrounds, from, you know, different indigenous women of color, like, and like you said, not necessarily doing anything to speak to that from any place of authority, but just changing my algorithm enough that I am like being inundated with more voices that do not look like mine than ones that do, like, completely reforms the opinion of how I see just about anything that comes up moving forward.
Absolutely. And I think when it comes to healing, it's also just so important to realize that it's just really not only about us, and that, yeah, of course, we have to have those boundaries and we have to look after ourselves. But once we do feel safe inside of our body, it's also about relating to one another. We're not just all little islands on the planet. We're all together in one big cohesive thing. So as much as, yes, we all have to heal individually, we also have to heal collectively by relating to each other. Because in the end, when we come, like, if you loop it back to what we started living, we live in society, we live in connection, we live in relationships. And that is where most people find their joy, their pleasure, by relating to one another. And it is such a powerful thing as well. I've always seen that in, for example, women's circles, where there's so much healing when women just come together and share stories and listen to each other. When women just dance around and do whatever they want to do together. And there's so much beauty in that relationship that we sometimes underestimate how important that is, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Because we get so caught up in ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and I have found the more that I have healed within myself and become more sovereign and more aware of any number of things, like, the more capacity I have to hold. And I think that's where is what I hope the next 10, 15, 20 beyond years looks like is more people kind of like asking bigger sets of questions of the conditioning that they were handed, the expectations they were handed, these systems they were handed, and like coming within their own journey to the point that like they can be in community and hold the space for the nuance and really go through this like period of mourning and grief as a collective to be able to, have the hard conversations and be able to like physically touch and look each other in the eye. And yeah, I think that's going to be a really important part of what moves us forward from here.
Absolutely. And one thing that came up to my brain when you were speaking was just how important as well in community it is to find out what our own standards and values are. For example, I can give a very simple example. Like, I used to live in the same community as where my ex-partner who has sexually abused me lives. And it is so hard to live in a dynamic like that and to figure out how that works, but also to figure out how that is going to affect your relationships with other people. And there absolutely have been people who, for example, would talk to me and be like, oh, it's so bad and I understand you and thank you for sharing, but then continue to build a relationship with this person and not hold them accountable. And those things I feel like are so important to learn. Like, what do we do and where does enablement become compliance, and where is just allowing someone to be without there being any sort of repercussions for that person? Where does that become abuse in itself, and where does that become wrong? And I think that we as society really have to learn those things, while also learning that we can't ostracize someone who has made a mistake, because in the end, even my ex-partner, I know that he's not a monster and I know that he made mistakes and I never want him in my life, but he's not a monster. So it's so nuanced to kind of like move with these situations.
How did your experiences, both in your personal and professional life, really weave together in this book that you created to help other people?
I think, to be fair, a lot of the reason why I wrote the book was because I was just really, really angry and I needed a way to get my rage out of my system without exploding and going in a very destructive way. So I wrote a book. But I think that like my experiences have led to me discovering energy work for the first time. And my experiences have always made me, also in the work that I do, understand nuances more. Since I know that when someone is going through a rough time, it's not just black and white. There are so many shades of gray, and that is really valuable to me to have that understanding and have that lived experience as well, but also to be able to show to my clients like, oh, there's light on the other side of the tunnel. And I think that it really fell together in the sense of the undertone of my book is of course from my experiences, but in the end, like, I don't describe my experiences in the book. It's purely theoretical. Like, I wrote a master thesis on gender-based violence. Like, these political discussions are there, but also these legal systems are explained there in an easy way. Like, we all have the right to equality. We all have the right to bodily autonomy, to freedom. Like, how do they all come together? And I think that that is a big part of my work in general. Even when I teach Reiki, like, I keep coming back to like that background in human rights, because that is a big part of what I studied. And I think that doing the other studies like somatic work, womb work, Reiki, that just allows me to come closer into myself and to explain to people, oh, these effects does certain experiences have on you. These range of solutions are there. Choose the ones that feel good to you. Because I truly don't believe that for anyone there is like a magic pill. There is 20,000 tools, 40,000 teachers, and it's finding the person who can hold your hands while you figure it out yourself. And finding the person who brings you closer to yourself and not into a version you think you have to be.
For anyone who is experiencing or on the other side of a hard season, whatever that means for them, whether it is what you describe in your book, a different kind of trauma, kind of peeling back, layers of conditioning or shame or expectations from their family or from a marriage or from a church or whatever. What advice would you give them for kind of that coming back into themselves, like reclaiming their power, like being able to rebuild towards their sovereignty and aliveness?
I would start with being really soft and gentle to yourself and allowing yourself to kind of explore what is alive in you, what do you feel, and go from there. And really, I would also always recommend to explore different forms of healing, explore different practitioners, explore different things, and find the ways that speak to you. And being brutally honest with yourself is the only way. Is finding people who allow you to just express and to speak and to just feel. But one other thing would also be to just intentionally follow your joy. So if it makes you happy to paint your wall pink, go and paint the wall pink. Like, also do those things and don't get lost in, I have to be better, but get lost in, I want to feel so alive. And from there, move forward and ask for help. I think so many of us so often forget that we're allowed to ask for help and that we're allowed to be held and that we don't have to do everything alone.
I know it's also been so helpful for me to embrace the idea of like, this is a forever journey. Like, we are so used to this instant gratification of like problem, solution, problem, solution. And so it's like we become aware of a problem or we're like in the middle of or on the other side of something and we want to feel a different way immediately. And when it comes to any kind of healing or growth or curiosity or identity work, it's like release the expectation that it has to be done tomorrow. Set the intention for where you're going and choose the next right steps that present, follow the breadcrumbs, and know that there probably is no right or wrong way to do this. And it is just a forever evolution and journey of life. I think decentering the idea that I need to have clarity or to figure it out or do the next right perfect thing to like magically create this next perfect magic result, like all that does is create another opportunity to feel like there's a new thing, another thing. And it's like, just follow. It sounds so simplistic, but follow the healing, follow the joy, follow the aliveness, and let it kind of take care of itself. I think it is always astounding to me how I'll have moments of realization of like, oh my gosh, everything is suddenly different. How did I get here? And it's time.
One of my teachers actually said to me multiple times, he was like, you're just going to be an unfinished project for the rest of your life. So why are you trying to be perfect now? And I was like, and in the beginning, I didn't fully get it. And after hearing it twice, I was like, ooh, yeah, it's so true. It's like allowing ourselves to never fully be ready, but still doing it anyway. But also just allowing ourselves to be a student and to learn and to work through things for the rest of our lives.
I love that so much. Okay, we could talk for hours, I have no doubt. But tell us a little bit more about if there's anything that hasn't been mentioned about the book that you'd like to share, or what's alive for you in your work this summer and how we can get connected to you more.
One thing that I would love to say about the book is that it's for everyone, every age, every gender. It's not just for people who have survived. It's really just an exploration of the topic of sexual violence from these three pair of glasses. And I feel like it's so important for everyone because we all have it. Either we experience it or someone around us experiences it. And just building our opinion on it is really for everyone and not just if we've survived it. And what is alive for me a lot right now is one thing we really spoke about so much is really choosing life and learning to fully live again and reconnect with your womb for a woman and reconnect with those desires and with that joy. And through my Instagram, which will be probably linked in the bio, I assume you can follow along, but also I have some one-on-one spots open for the summer where it is a one-on-one program where I will give you all the practices and all the tools that I've done in the past to really just find your way. It won't be to make you into my lifestyle. It will really be, Here you have Kriya Yoga, womb practices, Reiki, meditation, journal prompts, rituals, all the things that allow me to reconnect with myself. And I will hand them to you with just a lot of love and a lot of space for you to express and to be seen and to just figure out what is being alive for you. Because for me, that is what makes me the happiest in my work at the moment. So that is what I'm currently focusing on.
Sounds wonderful. And I also want to add that the idea of the journey to consent, I feel like I know a lot of the listeners are parents. And I think reading a book like this can be really helpful to inform what kind of conversations we're having with our kids. And that is not something that happens for the first time when they are reaching an age, when they're teenagers. Like, we have been talking about consent since our kids were babies and toddlers of, what does it mean to have boundaries, and, what kind of touch or what kind of language are you willing to receive, and what are you not willing to tolerate, and what do you do in a situation where someone is crossing that? I mean, that starts from the time they have any level of conceptual understanding. And so I definitely recommend, and even for coaches, like, what does it mean to be ethical practitioners with consent and understanding boundaries and trauma-informed care? So I am very excited to dive into your book as well. Thank you for sharing it with me.
Thank you for receiving it. And I would love to add to what you just said is that, like, as parents, understanding consent of your children starts within yourself. Like, I'm not a parent yet, but I do have the understanding that if I will have to teach my children about consent, I can only teach them what I know. So if I've never explored what I want, I need to do that myself. And in my book, it actually has a lot of practices as well that are very somatic, body-based. So like that will guide you through reconnecting with the body first and just seeing how certain things feel to you. And even one of the exercises is as simple as making a yes, no, maybe list, which means what are things you're interested in, what are things you are not okay with, what are maybes? Because I feel like it's such a simple thing that still actually nobody really has the clear answer to, because we all never really stand by it, even though we all are part of dynamics where these things get involved.
Yeah. Okay, last question that I ask every guest on the show is, what does growth look like for you in this season?
Growth in this season looks like laughing a little louder and just dancing around and learning to enjoy, and doing that simultaneously as growing my business and following my ambition. Because I've been in a massive series of healing, in a massive series of working really hard. And now I feel like it's time to integrate all of that with just a lot of joy and then loving and living life.
I resonate with that so deeply. I have been through just like very intense couple of years of ego death after death portal, after like meeting the dark night of the soul, all of that, which I think was so important for my journey to understand and integrate and really make peace with it. And now that I feel, kind of that I'm stepping into a new season, it feels like summer in every sense of the term, and just joy and laughter and color and abundance, and learning to embrace the seasonality and really get to enjoy each one for what it is has been so important for me too. So I connect a lot with that. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for gracing us with your wisdom and your perspective. I'm really grateful for you.
Thank you so much for all the beautiful conversations we've had over the last weeks. It's been my absolute pleasure.
Me too. And with that, baby is ready for a diaper change. All right. We'll talk to you soon. For anyone listening, if there is something that either one of us said that sparked your attention, please feel free to reach out. Specifically on Instagram for both of us would probably be best. We would love to hear from you and continue the conversation. And if Nadine's work grabs your attention, please check out her book or shoot her a message about how to get started working together, even if just for a virtual Reiki session, which I will say was delightful. I think that I was supposed to have my eyes closed And a few times I just opened them and was like watching her do her thing. And I'm like, this is the most relaxing. I need a video of you doing Reiki to like, that's what I want to meditate to. So, and that playlist or the song that we used, I used over the weekend when doing Reiki on my husband. So thank you for that gift as well. I really have enjoyed that. All right. Until next time.
See you later.
Hey friend, I hope this conversation sparked something real in you. Something that feels like truth, curiosity, or the courage to keep becoming. If this episode resonated, I'd love for you to share it. Take a screenshot, post it to your stories, or send it to one of your friends. You can always find me over on Instagram at Emily Rushel, where I love continuing these conversations and hearing your takeaways. Truly, your DMs are one of my favorite parts of podcasting, so don't be shy. I'd love to reflect and connect with you over there. I'm so grateful to be surrounded by a community of women who ask hard questions, sit in the discomfort of the unknown, blaze new paths forward, and ultimately come home to their wild and waking selves. See you next week.